All right, we are back on Morning Line. Our guest is Clint Kelly, malpractice attorney here in town. It's always good to have Clint on. I like his new glasses, the shades. Looking good.
Thank
Dapper
you.
on TV. All right. Listen, we've got Ann who waited through the break, so let's take her call. Ann, good morning. How are you, Ann?
Good morning. My mother battled alcohol. She was a functioning alcoholic for most of her adult life, and in her later years was a doctor shopper. And she has been gone for 15 plus years, and at the time of her death, unfortunately, had found a doctor that was prescribing 360 plus Oxycontin on top of many other powerful drugs, which were the cause of her death. At the time, it took months for me to track down the fact that he had lost all privileges at hospital, but not to have office privileges, and had also had to cross over into Kentucky. And she was going to Kentucky for prescriptions and was getting prescriptions filled in various places here in Tennessee. And by the time we tracked down everything, at that time, all you could really do was file complaint against this physician.
So what's your question?
My question is now, at that time, you really couldn't do anything against him. Tennessee recently has had doctors that have had charges brought against them.
Yeah.
My question for you is, we don't see many doctors having charges brought against them for overprescription. What has Tennessee done to change this in the last 15, 20 years? I watch this in the news religiously.
Okay.
No.
The answer, Ann, is nothing.
Yeah, okay. You were going to say that. Nothing.
Nothing.
Well, now, I've seen law enforcement raid pill mills. Okay, I mean, they've gone after pill mills.
She's asking what has Tennessee done, presumably through the legislature, in passing laws to try to curb overprescriptions, try to curb the practice of opioid dispensing in such a way as to create addicts. And I'm telling you, nothing. The DEA has done a lot of things to pharmacies. They have published certain guidelines about how much can be prescribed. So they've put some, I guess, guardrails on the amount of prescriptions that can be prescribed at any given time through the DEA. But that's through the DEA, not through Tennessee. That doesn't do anything to hold the physicians accountable for getting people addicted or being pill mills. That's what she's talking about. So, Ann, in answer to your question, a big nothing. Now, I think going forward, because of the attention we now have to the opioid crisis and because pharmaceutical companies now are being held accountable, I'm hearing amounts thrown around up to $100 billion.
That's what I wanted to ask you. I mean, you've been watching this. You've seen some of these cases moving forward.
Yes.
And it looks like they're going to lose.
They're going to lose big because these are being compared to tobacco.
Yeah.
So they're being held accountable. But I don't see the public push either through the legislatures or through the public at large to hold the physicians accountable for their part of this.
If you were in charge, what would you do? What would you pass? I mean, the laws are on the books. If you can catch the physicians, writing bogus prescriptions over and over again, some of them get busted by law enforcement. What else can you do?
I would pass a law that would require a statewide audit.
Oh, okay. Of all pills?
Of all prescribers.
Okay.
And I would particularly focus in the pain management arena. to try to figure out who's prescribing what and how much, to keep a registry.
Okay.
Because that is one means by which you can detect who is running a pill mill. I think it's kind of hard to hide it if you have to have an audit or an accounting of some way. That's what I would do. I'm sure there are a lot of other things that can be done. There could be perhaps a separate crime for physicians who recklessly prescribe hydrocodone or oxycodone or something along those lines and injure somebody. But nothing right now has been done, and I'll tell you, Nick, I don't think anything is going to be done insofar as the physicians are concerned.
Yeah. Where the things are going to get done is in these lawsuits against the pharmaceuticals as it stands.
Because they've got the money.
Do you think they saw this coming, the pharmaceutical? So do you think they have a reserve somewhere ready to do these payouts? And
there were some emails that came up in the news that were put on the screen that you could read for yourself, and you can read these representatives of the pharmaceutical companies getting so excited about they had a quota, exceeding their quota by 5, 6, 7 times, and recognizing that the people who were taking these pills were probably addicted.
Yeah.
And so they focused on certain doctors where the pill mills were and just fed them as much as they could. And they knew what they were doing, and they knew these things were addicted. They knew that there were people who could take 5 days worth of narcotics and wind up addicted, and they did nothing.
Yep. It's amazing the money that's been made.
And I will tell you,
I mean,
if they're going to pay a joint settlement anywhere between $50 and $100 billion, you rest assured if they do that, that means that they were guilty of sin.
Yes.
Because nobody pays that kind of money unless the government and the attorneys who are representing these families have got the goods on the pharmaceutical companies.
And even if they pay that, they're going to say if that's still a drop in the bucket of what they've actually earned for them. Or is this going to hurt them?
I think this is going to hurt.
Okay.
I think this is going to be painful,
well,
just like it was for the tobacco companies.
I think it may be worse than that. Yeah, in terms of how
it's going to be big, whatever it is, and it's federal, state, and local.
Yeah, they're getting hit from all sides, all these lawsuits going on. Again, the number 737-7587 if you want to jump in, join in the conversation. This case here, I remember reading this, and Clint, you found some doozies.
This is one that really shocked me because of the way it went down. This was a lady that had heart surgery, and there's a tube among many tubes that is connected to the machine. You know, the machine is supposed to recycle blood into you. It basically pumps blood for you until the heart works. Long story short, this tube is supposed to be tied off, okay, so that blood, when it makes its way down the tube, doesn't leak out. Okay, so it's a closed system.
Okay.
Think of it sort of like a safety valve that when there's an excess amount of blood, bleeds off, okay?
Okay.
You got to make sure that that valve doesn't stay open so that the blood just continues to leak out.
Okay, and if it's and this is blood that's supposed to be cycling through the body, and it's coming, but there was a leak in a tube.
Leak in a tube, and she loses 7 pints of blood.
Oh my gosh.
Finally, somebody notices it. I think it's her anesthesiologist when her vital signs go down the tube.
Where's the blood going?
In a bucket.
Next to the bed.
Next to the bed. That's where the safety valve bleeds off, is into a bucket.
And there's 7 pints of blood.
7 pints of blood. The bucket.
That's like.
So all these doctors and medical staff swarm into the OR trying to save this lady's life. All hands on deck. They try to shove 7 pints of blood into her body. And guess what, Nick? Because no one discovered the tube was open, she bled that 7 pints into the bucket. In other words, everything they were putting into her is coming straight out. I mean, it makes you wonder how big this bucket was.
Well, sure.
Of course, she died.
All right, but okay, here's the thing that is baffling. All right, isn't the first question I, or anyone else would ask when they go in, okay, all right, we've got to stabilize this woman, obviously. Where is the blood going? Why is this happening? Now, that's what's really shocking to me. That's a no-brainer. Anyone, you don't have to be a doctor to ask that question. Why is this blood leaking? And let's fix it. How do they not do that?
Well, it makes you wonder what kind of safety practice they have to make sure that when someone's vital signs are going down like that, that you don't have a method for looking around and thinking to yourself, hey, is there a leak? You know, a lot of times people can bleed internally. You know, when you start looking for it internally. There it was externally. It was right in front of their face.
So you know it's spilling out. You know there's a leak. And
so you would think that there would be a safety checklist you go through. And one of the things on the checklist is check the tube.
Right. So this always comes to me, the two cases we've talked about, Neil Armstrong's, where, you know, he goes to a cath lab instead. And then in this case, you've got a woman who's bleeding out. As a family member that's there, that's the thing. Is there anything the family, I'm not placing blame on the family, I'm just saying, is there anything that they could do to try to prevent this from happening to a loved one?
Well, this case, no way. I mean, first of all, I'm not sure the family even knew it until it was all over.
Okay, they wouldn't have been in the room to see the bucket. I mean, if I walk in the room and I see my loved one there and there's a bucket with blood in it, I'm gonna say something. I'm like, wait, that looks like a lot of blood here.
The family wouldn't know that, and in Neil Armstrong's case, I doubt that anyone would know or have a clue.
To question, go into a cath lab.
Sure, so you're really at the mercy of the healthcare providers, and that's
Nick, we trust them.
Yeah. In surgery cases, 9 times out of 10, there's not going to be a thing you can argue that the patient could have done or the patient's family could have done to make the situation any better.
All right, it's just so you have to trust them and pick your hospitals as best as you can.
Yeah, that's exactly making sure you're in the right place at the right time, and I think a lot of that also has to do with checking, but word of mouth.
I was going to ask you, how would you go about doing it if you move to a new town and you're not familiar and you need a hospital for surgery? How would you go about selecting a hospital if there's several in town?
Well, there's probably people you work with who've had procedures done, who can tell you what they think about the hospital care. You can go online and check around. They don't have the same type of system that they do for physicians that tell you if physicians are bad or have had malpractice cases. But you can call somebody like me because I know the good hospitals from the bad. That's the best way to figure out a good hospital to go to. And then, of course, your physician's even more intimate. I really think you got to do your homework to pick the right physician or surgeon, because that's where word of mouth really matters.
Right, and you would say, I mean, and we're not going to name names or anything, but in the spectrum, as you've covered, there is a range. There are some hospitals you're going to feel more comfortable going to for cardiac surgery than others.
Correct.
Okay, there's some that you may feel more comfortable sending a child to,
or let's say a trauma case. If I'm laying on the road bleeding from a massive trauma from a car wreck, Vanderbilt's where I want to go. Okay. No question about it. I think they've got the best trauma program in the state. That's where I want to go. Would I want to go to Vanderbilt for some other things? Probably not.
Okay.
But every hospital
has their strengths and weaknesses.
Has its strengths and weaknesses.
Gotcha. Okay, that's an important point. Listen, we'll take a break on that note. When we come back, more phone calls, more of our conversation with malpractice attorney Clint Kelly right after this.
Storm 5 weather update. For weather on the go, download the Storm Shield app.